All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's NASP community question, where we have questions contributed by our members, and we get the opportunity once a week to pick a random question and answer it. There may be some bias on the question that we pick. Today's question is, what do I do if my sales conversation is going down the wrong path? What do I do if my sales conversation is going down the wrong path? And I'm going to hand it right over to Michelle Baker, our Director of Global Sales Development, to answer today's question.
Well, thank you, Rick Middlemass, our Vice President of Sales and Marketing. And this is a fun question because what happens with the conversation is, as you've heard me say, sales is simply a conversation. So the more likely or the better the conversation I have with a prospective or a buyer, the more likely they feel comfortable about what I'm saying and move forward in the sales transaction, be that another appointment or close the deal. And so I want to back up for a second and say that starting that sales conversation is most powerful when I start with a pre-frame. Oh, goodness. Saying why we're there, delivering and talking about what the desired outcome is, puts them at ease, right? Because they know I'm there to make a sale. And when I don't tell them that, I will go off track. So giving myself a target of where that conversation wants to go helps my mind to keep moving forward as I'm having that conversation. And I always have a place to go back to. So when I don't start with a pre-frame, I'm more likely to start going off in the weeds. Think about it in terms of driving a car. When I don't put the directions in the GPS and I'm winging it, high probability of getting lost or getting stuck in traffic or not being able to avoid those traffic jams, because that's what the beauty of GPS does for me. It keeps me moving in that direction. So when I know and feel like things are going off and I've started with that pre-frame, and even when I haven't, it's take the lead and say, hey, you know what? I think we're getting a little off track here. I really want you to walk away with the most value possible. Go back to value. Go back to the reason that you're there. You're there to deliver an incredible and amazing solution. So always go back to that, your desire for them to walk away better off for having had that conversation. Right? We tend to get nervous and start to panic and freak out. I want you to stay calm in your ability to be a top performer and an incredible deliverer of solutions to that person in front of you. And just say that. Say, I apologize. We kind of went off in the weeds and I know time is valuable. So I'd like to get back to that. Or even say, hey, you know what? I was so excited about seeing you. I forgot to start with why we're here. So let's back up and talk about why we're here and get redirected. It's you get to you're driving, they're the passenger, and it's up to you to keep that sale or that vehicle moving in the direction that's a win-win for all available. So Rick, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you nailed it. The two key things that I took from what you just said is, it is our responsibility as influencers, sales professionals, leaders of a situation or a team to set an effective pre-frame going into any communication, a meeting, a conversation, whatever it is. And just vital, our responsibility. And what does that take? That takes at least 30 seconds to a couple of minutes, maybe even 5 minutes of just thinking through in my mind, what's the outcome for this conversation? After this conversation is completed, how do I want people to, how could people be best feeling, and what could be the key thought and intention that, people are kind of having after that meeting. That preparation allows us to pre-frame very effectively, very intentionally. The other thing you brought up, the reframe, right? If we're already into a conversation, and back to the question, what do I do if my sales conversation is going down the wrong path? So maybe it wasn't effectively pre-framed, or it was, and one of the buyers, maybe one of the, thinking back to a actual meeting, particular network administrator, just kind of took the conversation in a whole different direction that wasn't relevant to that meeting, in my opinion. So in that situation, a reframe is incredibly powerful. And a great example of that that I can think of is someone maybe asks a question, and I say, well, so a question that, or another question that we could think of to kind of get through this challenge could be, how can we look at this from what's the fastest way to get this outcome? Or, some such question, basically using a question to reframe the conversation. Very important if, especially if it feels like the sales conversation is going down an unproductive path, maybe even a bit of a negative spiral if, people are frustrated with a particular thing that has happened. So the pre-frame, so important, and a proactive way to do this. The reframe, very powerful if somehow the conversation goes off course, or even if, there isn't an effective pre-frame that's set, forget to pre-frame, something like that. So you spot on with what you said, Michelle, and just kind of reiterating the pre-frame and the reframe. Any final thoughts for today?
No, there I go. I said no, and then I was about to answer yes. And I love that you said reframe with a question, because as we speak to at the National Association of Sales Professionals, we remind people the most powerful way to capture your buyer's attention is with a question, because they immediately go into their mind, their imagination, they start thinking. So that is, especially if you've gone off into the rails, you're in the weeds, a quick way to get everyone calm and refocus is that question, because everybody's thinking now. So yeah, I love that reminder. Thanks.
Awesome. I think the most famous reframe question of a whole country is when President Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So that changed a whole narrative of me asking, hey, I want this from the government, to, hold on, how can I contribute to this culture, to this economy? Fantastic example of a reframe question. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. I forgot to say at the beginning, if you are not already a member of the National Association of Sales Professionals, check out our membership options. We do have a free membership by clicking the URL above. And also check out our seller style assessment, which is a free assessment for you to understand what your current selling style or personal selling culture, selling behavior is, and what your ideal selling style, selling behavior, or selling culture is according to you, and to kind of start to understand what is the gap there, what is my next level of being able to grow as an effective influencer, therefore sales professional and leader. So click the links above if you've not already done that. We look forward to talking with you next week on our NASP Weekly Community Questions Facebook Live. See you next week, everyone. Have a great week. Happy selling.